Hey guys, how's it going? Coach Tyson from Ox Strength. Ani हामी workout गरिरहेको थियो हल्का. Ani like we just thought about this topic. एकदम impromptu plan जस्तो भयो. But then it's something that I should have probably talked about earlier, that never late then now. So we're gonna end the debate. Sumo versus conventional. Is sumo actually cheating? कि conventional is much harder? के हो भनेर चाहिँ त्यही हामी like training गर्दै थियो, and then there's lots of aspects to it, and then why do people think, what do I think, because being somebody who's pretty much done both quite successfully, or you can say pretty bad at both, because like दुइटै similar range माने छ मेरो competition, deadlift in both sumo and conventional is 290 285 around this range, and then I've gone back and forth, believe it or not, because मैले start गर्दाखेरि powerlifting start गर्दाखेरि I used to pull conventional for a long time, like few years conventionally pull गरे, and then त्यो बेलाको heaviest deadlift at the time was 220 kg, which I had done conventional, and then I switched to sumo, and then I particularly never found it easier in my case. And then 6-7 months त्यसपछि I did 225 sumo when I switched, and then त्यसपछि like I continued my sumo because sumo was pretty good, and then I had my thoughts back in the day as well, and then over the years I did sumo until 285. I also managed to do 300 in a deadlift competition. And त्यसपछि like because of my body weight gain and everything, we decided, okay, let's try conventional again. And then within like 6 to 8 months, I was already in my what do you say, top end strength, even while doing conventional. So yeah, I definitely have a lot of thoughts and experience with this deadlift, looking at clients and everything. So yeah, we'll talk about this topic. First things first, just to make it clear, sumo is not cheating. It's definitely not as easy as some people who only do conventional deem it to be, considering a few things. First things first, if it's done in a power bar, like an actual power bar, which is stiff, which has dimensions, the inside dimension of a power bar, which is similar to an Elico or IPF approved equipment, the collars are not super wide. It does not really make much of a difference. Where sumo becomes cheating is like, especially when we use straps. Straps पनि त्यो यस्तो तल हाल्नेवाला strap position हुन्छ नि, त्यो गर्दाखेरि, and then when it's extremely whippy bar, even like regular deadlift bars are पनि त्यस्तो साह्रो cheating हुँदैन. Whereas some of the crazy deadlift bars हुन्छ नि जुनमा चाहिँ एकदमै धेरै whip हुन्छ, and then which also has the place super wide where one can really put their sumo feet extremely wide, and then the range of motion is really compromised. यस्तो position छैन भने चाहिँ in general sumo is not much easier than conventional. That's just the fact. With that out of the way, considering we're doing it with calibrated plates on a real power bar, which is IPF approved or approved in raw federations, like a bar that doesn't have so much slack or something, then sumo is definitely not cheating. Now, where this equation topic comes from, people, is that sumo has a shorter range of motion, and then conventional has a shorter range of motion. So people usually tend to believe like, ए sumo गऱ्यो भने range of motion short छ, so easy हुन्छ भनेर सोच्छ. That is kind of true, but it's really not true, because when we are doing a sumo deadlift, we put ourselves in a mechanically slightly disadvantageous position, meaning that our center of mass is around shoulder width, right? So when we go into like a wider stance, we're going away from the center, so it makes it slightly or that much more difficult the further away that we go from the center to produce force off the ground. So that makes the sumo deadlift slightly in a disadvantageous position. So we could also have the same argument from the opposite end, like यस्तो advantageous position मा बस्यो भने obviously conventionally easy हुन्छ, because you can generate so much force off the ground भन्नु मिल्छ. But again, it's not true, because again, when we are doing conventional, center of mass यो way मात्रै हैन नि त, front and back center of mass पनि हुन्छ. So when we're doing a conventional, we're again putting ourselves in a disadvantageous position, because our hips are much further away from the barbell. Yo plane match, it's much further away. Whereas sumo, we can really wedge into the bar to get better position. So there's a trade in and trade out for both stances. But then when people try to defame sumo, it's like, oh, you're going so wide, you can wedge so nicely. It's like no range of motion, this, that. It's we need to understand that different people are also again built very differently. Some people cannot really wedge into the uh, deadlift so nicely that they create the advantages of a sumo deadlift, and then it only puts them in so much a negative position because their hips are also far, and then the toes are also extremely far. So दुईटै प्लेनबाट नै negative sumo position मा हुन्छ, and this really I think comes down to technique adherence, how you're built, and also a little bit with what do you say, a little bit with your natural, what do you say, your natural, what do you say, त्यसलाई के भन्छ, leverages. Okay, oh, just leverages. Yeah, leverages. Like के or like अलिकति डेन्जर वर्ड मात्रै आइरहेको सिम्पल भन्नु खोजेको त झन् यताउति भएर, but and which was leverages पनि it makes a huge difference as to what you are really built for. So with that out of the way, some people are generally good in both and bad at both, and this is usually a trend because the characteristics of a good sumo deadlifter or a conventional deadlifter are pretty similar in a sense that the person would typically have longer legs, slightly longer femurs, but a shorter torso and super long arms. So यस्तो खालके मान्छेहरू छ भने they usually are good at any kind of deadlift. अलिकति तल अलिकति माथि obviously हुन्छ because when we look at elite lifters like pulling into the 350 400 kg mark, like they obviously didn't get there within like a few months, right? So they practiced only one stance, like conventional or sumo, for a long period of time. So this my discrepancy obviously धेरै हुन्छ. Just because you're strong in one doesn't mean you have to be उनीहरूले train गरेको भयो, let's say Nanzo or somebody who pulls really extremely good conventional deadlift. I can't think of too many people. Nanzo Takai, because we were just talking about it earlier. Usko 415 conventional deadlifts. But had he trained the sumo deadlift together along with this conventional, he'd probably be around 370, 380 for both. Which goes to show what practice can really do for you. But then maybe for now, he's just been doing conventional for his whole training career, that the sumo deadlift was left behind and he never even bothered about it. So यस्तो मान्छेहरूले sumo is cheating भनेर भन्नु मिल्दैन. Like conventional is cheating पनि भन्नु मिल्दैन because his conventional is that much better. So it really depends on how you're training for it as well. For me, from my personal experience, sumo has a few set of benefits that really helped me. First things first is usually when we're doing a sumo deadlift, few things are easier. First, the recovery for me for my squat is much better with sumo, and then with sumo I can generally handle more workload because of the more upright position. My lower back gets less compromised, whereas when I'm doing conventional, my lower back gets extremely cooked and my squat also along with it. So I choose to do sumo personally more because I can also train my squat that much better, and then I am not so fatigued after my workout or something of that sort. But whereas when I do conventional, the advantage for me is that it's more reliable. I can have a better day oftentimes because with the sumo being slightly more technical, I wouldn't say like कतिजनाले चाहिँ like conventional यस्तो technical छैन, sumo चाहिँ technical छ भन्छ, but obviously both are technical, both are very very similar. But with me, because of many variables to manage, fighting my own body, the biggest one, it keeps changing, like with food, with sleep, with weight classes, with bench press going up, with squat going up, like bench press grow, the upper body नै ठुलो हुन्छ and I can't wedge. जस्तो हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ for me, conventional seems to be more reliable because when I look at my sumo strength, it's supposed to be like 310, 320, right? But then I can't really have the good day whenever I want. Whereas conventional, even though I'm slightly weaker, I have a more positive outcome. So your duita मेरो लाग्यो. Other little things that I noticed is that usually sumo गर्दाखेरि grip issues lesser हुन्छ. Also, I think it's got to do with being in a more advantageous position for the grip because it can be directly under my shoulders. Whereas for me, especially being a bigger, wider guy and then big fat legs, I need to go much wider with the conventional. Now, if you're somebody like straight हुन सक्छ भने from the front as well, maybe grip is not an issue, but that is definitely a consideration. Like for me, I always feel like my bar is gonna slip out whenever I do the conventional because of the leverages and all of these things. I can't think of more things about the advantages and disadvantages. Training usually sumo is much easier in training, especially to do more volume. Obviously, it's got to do with the range of motion and uh, it's just being a more efficient movement for the hip, especially if you have good sumo deadlift. I feel like sumo is much easier to train higher volumes with, uh, and then conventional usually more difficult, and then we have to rely on the taper. Our training maxes for sumo would usually be higher because we are training it that much more. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, uh, it's just harder to train sumo because it's much higher 2% 1 RM. So मेरो max दुइटामै 290 हो भने when I'm doing sumo it's probably like my volume day is like 3 into 5 250 260 something like that, crazy, right? But then the same thing on conventional would be like 220 3 to 6. So कुन चाहिँलाई गाह्रो भन्ने? If I were to do 250 3 to 6, obviously conventional would be harder for me, but then I'm getting similar result in terms of my top end. So conventional is also kind of easier in that way that I don't have to use maximal strength. So there's always gonna be like so there's always gonna be two faces to the coin, right? Double-edged sword. जे भने नि हुन्छ दुई जिब्रे सर्प हो तर like it could be anything, right? There's gonna be a pro and there's gonna be a con, and what we really need to understand when we're dealing with this topic is that one is gonna be easier for an individual. So for me, sumo is easier, for sure. But then for somebody, sumo is going to be impossible. And just because you can't do sumo does not mean it's cheating because somebody else is doing it better. Uh, Technique, people think like sumo or conventional go technique is like akas zamine farak huncha. Sumo is like super technical. Conventional is just grip and grip kind of a thing. I disagree with that statement because I feel both deadlift are same except the stance. We still have to manage the slack pull, not so much, not so little. We still need to manage where we're applying the pressure from. We still need to look at our stacking, how our knees are stacking with our feet, with our hips to our shoulders to our neck, and every single thing. The programming considerations are also going to be a huge, huge, huge topic, especially because, like I said earlier as well, sumo, we tend to be able to do more frequency, more volume, more higher relative intensity, whereas conventional is going to be less frequent, less heavier, less volume, but then more reliable. So यस्तो तन्ने कुरालाई चाहिँ हामीले गर्नु मिल्छ. I kind of forgot to talk about weight classes as well because in general with sumo deadlift, smaller people usually are better with sumo deadlift in a sense because they're shorter. And shorter boy, but see, you don't have to go through a deep range of motion, and then even if it's inefficient position, it's kind of like a rack pull because 6 feet को मान्छेलाई चाहिँ भुइँबाट 18 इन्चमा हुनुपर्छ अनि 5 feet 2 inches चाहिँ भुइँबाट 12 inches हुनुपर्छ. त्यस्तो रुल छैन नि त. सबैजनालाई नै स्ट्यान्डर्ड एउटा हाइट छ त्यो बारबेलको डायमिटर अनुसार. सो I think it's like 8.5 inch or something around this. So सबैजनालाई नै same standard भएको भएर चाहिँ even if it's an inefficient position for shorter lifters, people with shorter shin, people with longer arms, उनीहरूलाई usually sumo easier नै हुन्छ in compare to the conventional. And then for taller lifters, bigger lifters, sumo is gonna be hard because it's gonna feel like it's so down low, and then like on inefficient position and then you have to fight your body really, so it makes it that much more difficult. So I think I kind of have a biased take because I'm not like the biggest person, whereas I'm not the smallest person. I have a good decent sumo, a decent conventional. So बिचबाट बसेर हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ I feel like they're equally more challenging. And then if you kind of feel like one is cheating over the other, just do the easier version, and that's all I really want to talk about. Now, there's going to be lots of things, but I really don't want to dive into it so much more because we're just going to go into a podcast kind of way. So I'll leave it at that. I will let you decide, but my message is don't demonize one another. I feel like both are exceptionally good. Right now, Moro, just we're in a point where like we need to learn from conventional into sumo and sumo into conventional so that we can do the preferred stance. For me, I'm going to do sumo for this comp. And then what I learned from sumo, I take into conventional. What I learned from conventional, I take into sumo. And then overall, at the end of the day, we want to be the last pullers, right? So whatever it takes, we're try and put ourselves into that position. And if you have any questions regarding any topic, leave them in the comments. I'll try and be active for this YouTube for a while. And then if you still don't know how to figure shit out, how to figure what is good for you, what is bad for you, we're available. Moro, just we're taking in clients, working full time to help you guys get better, stronger, fitter, get your best performance out in the platform. So if you're interested in coaching as well, do let us know on our Instagram. Until then, be strong.